Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to today's event, Surfacing the Value of Blockchain with Analytics, sponsored by Qlik and hosted by American Banker. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that today's session is being recorded and you are currently in a listen-only mode today. The On24 room that you're in allows you to individually adjust and resize all available panels that do appear on your screen. To resize any of the console panes, simply click on the lower right corner of that pane to adjust. And you can move panes to your preference by clicking anywhere on the top title bar of that panel and dragging to your desired location within the console. We will have a question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. However, you may type in your questions at any time on the left-hand side of your screen in the Q&A panel. Type in your questions into that lower text box and then hit the Submit button. Please note that the slides are not available for download at this time. However, you will be receiving information via email in about a week on how you can access the recording of today's event, as well as a PDF copy of the presentation. Finally, if anyone should experience any technical difficulties during today's event, please first try refreshing your browser to reset your connection. If that does not work, you can send a tech chat through the Q&A panel stating your technical issue. And now, without any further delay, let's begin today's event. Once again, Surfacing the Value of Blockchain with Analytics. Once again, sponsored by Qlik and hosted by American Banker. I would like to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Mike Sisk. Mike, you now have the floor.
Thanks very much, Christina, and I would like to welcome the audience once again. We are very grateful that you have chosen to share some of your busy day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and for the next 60 minutes or so, we will make every effort to make every minute count. Once again, our topic today is Surfacing the Value of Blockchain with Analytics. And my name is Michael Sisk. I will be your moderator today. I've been a New York-based journalist for about 20 years, and I've had stints as contributing editor at Bank Technology News and editor-at-large at U.S. Banker. My articles have appeared, besides American Banker, of course, in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy and Business, and Worth. And I am very pleased to introduce our two speakers today. The first is Paul Van Siclen. Paul is Qlik Director of Industry Solutions, Financial Services. He has more than 20 years of experience in financial services. He is a certified public accountant, has an MBA from University of Florida, and very, very pleased to have Paul with us today. And joining Paul is Fred Hefer. Fred is CEO and co-founder of Pomerol Partners, a Deutsche Bank spin-off in 2013, or spin out in 2013. He has more than 10 years experience in Tier 1 investment banking as employee and consulting services provider. He's a Qlik Luminary 2017 and America's PAC member. And also very pleased to have Fred with us today. And just before we jump into the real meat of the discussion here, I wanted to reiterate one thing that Christina had mentioned at the top, and that is that we do have time at the end for Q&A. Usually we try to set aside about 10 or 15 minutes or so. You do not have to wait until the end to put your question into the queue. You can do that throughout the hour as the spirit moves you, and we encourage you to do that. If we have lots of great questions and we get lots of material to get through, and we don't get to your question in the time we have today, we will follow up soon thereafter. So please ask away, and we very much like to hear from you. So that kind of brings me to the end of my little spiel here. Let me officially turn things over to Paul to take us through the agenda and get things really kicked off today. Paul, please take it away.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it, and appreciate again everyone's time joining us today. This is a summary of the agenda we're going to be walking through today. We have Fred Hefer, who has some experience delivering blockchain solutions in the marketplace. So he's going to give us a run through of the definition of blockchain, what is it, what the value points are, and then we're both going to start touching on what is the value of bridging blockchain with analytics, and why analytics should not be an afterthought at the end of the day. It should be something that that can be put up front in front of your blockchain projects and in front of your blockchain initiatives. We're going to then address the spectrum of analytics challenges, and within that spectrum, we're going to define a use case that Pomerol Partners, Fred's company, delivered on an FX trading desk. And then finally, we're going to run through a demo. We've got a demo of a company called Ripple, which is distributed ledger. that we've looking at all of 2016's transactions and analyzing the trends and patterns and things that have occurred inside of that distributed ledger. So wanted to now introduce Fred. Fred's going to cover the first part of the agenda. Fred, take it away.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the intro, Mike. So firstly, I'll start with a disclaimer and then quickly follow that up with some context. So today's session in What is Blockchain? I will be focusing this on the business user. So I will not be addressing deep technical issues around the blockchain, such as Ethereum, Ether, the role of mining, public versus personal chains. It will be very much spoken to in terms of a ledger. Where is the data residing? How does that data come to fruition? And what potential use cases are there out there that we've seen and that we've addressed by using the blockchain, more specifically Ethereum-based blockchain. So to start this off, I really want to show you guys 3 diagrams. These are networks. The concept of a distributed ledger has been around for quite some time, but I'll talk through a distributed ledger use case by firstly showing you what does a centralized network look like, what does a decentralized network look like, and how can a distributed ledger address that. For the technical guys on the call, I would highly recommend you guys watching this video series, Trust Disrupted. It's available on YouTube to understand and explain more about the technical details and the history of how Ethereum and the blockchain came to what it is now. So without further ado, let's jump into some real-world use cases. Paul, I think we just might need to set the context in terms of what is the goal and the history. Should we just do this one again over? Restart this with you taking this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fred, thanks. Blockchain, although being around for a while, has been really taken off recently. And so we said, well, where have we been? Where have we been? And so these are some of the key points over the course of, let's say, the last few years, where digital currency and Bitcoin currency startups are starting to come out. Ripple entering the U.S. banking system, and then everywhere you look, you hear about fintech and blockchain actually disrupting the banking industry. But we wanted to really focus on, what is the goal? Why are people doing this? People are doing this for one of 3 reasons. They're either looking to increase revenue, decrease costs, or better manage and understand risk. And most likely it's actually a combination of these things. But at the end of the day, it's about making money and finding places to reduce money. So do you have anything to add to that one, Fred?
No, that's good. Let's jump into the use cases. Paul, yeah. So without further ado, what you guys are seeing here, I've tried to represent what a centralized network looks like, and let me just chat through the use case. So on the schematic on the right-hand side, you've got a banking institution. Let's call that a FX trading desk. You'll see them sitting in the middle here. The product we're trading is FX, and it's easy enough to onboard clients that are sitting on the outside of these nodes. So when a client such as a Walmart or a Microsoft gets onboarded onto the bank's platform, that's fine. I mean, that's easy enough to maintain. But if you can consider a big institution that has multiple currency pairs, when the complexity really starts to kick in when there's price changes. So how do price changes get captured by the trader or the desk? It can happen through Bloomberg Messenger. It can be over email. It can be over the phone. It can be over a dinner. And those price changes or those negotiations, more often than not, somebody keeps a spreadsheet close to the trader. But then once that's on the on the system and then that gets approved, it needs to feed a lot of subsystems. It needs to go to the sales system, it needs to go to the operational system, it needs to go to risk, and it needs to go to the finance guys. So easy enough to onboard clients, but complexities and intercompany differences and reconciliations arise from the capture when the information starts flowing back and forward. So this is an example of a proof of concept we developed to address this specific use case. But from a data perspective, the thing that we wanted to get away from was that central point of capture in Excel. Now, what I want to show you guys is if we just take one step on in terms of complexity, this is a example of a decentralized network. So, in essence, there's still a few parties that are rather large, but it's a bit more sophisticated in terms of where the nodes are going. So, let's talk about a use case within insurance. So, if you can imagine asset tracking, so whether we're talking about a super yacht or a construction asset, there are multiple players in this interactional chain. You've got owners, you've got their regulator, you've got valuers, you've got legal teams that then get split into conveyancing and estate planning. You've got asset services that look after the tracking, the maintenance, and the management. And you also have insurance participants, multiple participants here as well. And if you think about the data that's being collected here, a lot of these individual nodes, such as say, the owner or some of the services, will capture Excel database source. But the more sophisticated data sources will be the insurer or even the legal team. Now, the fact that there's multiple data sources just increases the risk for things to go wrong. When you think about the insurer trying to underwrite the premium next year, if he wants to make an accurate decision around what is all of the participants and the information going into this asset, he has to collect a lot of information. So if you can imagine that all of this information is at hand of the insurer, and it's instantly validated in terms of security, it makes it a lot easier for that insurer to write a more accurate premium, and he can do more business, which is make more money. So that's another use case where we've developed a proof of concept, and we feel that the decentralized model also is it's a great model for addressing in a decentralized network. If I now move over to the distributed network, so let's just track back somewhat. So if we can look at, so we had an example of a centralized network where there's one center or clearing party. We had a decentralized network where there were multiple parties with varying degrees of interest, but no central party actually holding all of the information, which the blockchain addresses.
I'd note that, and Fred, I'd note on both of those models, what you're showing is a spreadsheet depicted on the right-hand side, which oftentimes these use cases are actually just tracked the old, and tracked and reported through spreadsheets, right?
Yep. And that's even if it's not recorded in a spreadsheet, it might be more sophisticated data sources, but it's the complexity of the workflows and different participants in that chain. There's no single source of truth for all of the participants. There's usually somebody pulling the strings.
Yep.
In a decentralized network, in a distributed network, aka the blockchain, as you can imagine, everybody gets a copy of that information, and only the parties that are privy to the information can see that the data that they're allowed to access. So if we cast our minds back to the FX trading example, the bank is sat in the middle. The rules of engagement might dictate that the bank can see all of the trades, and the rules of engagement for the participants such as a Walmart or a Microsoft, they can only see their prices with the bank. And the rules of the game that I'm mentioning here is actually the smart contract that underpins the distributed ledger. And that's where the real intelligence lies. So There's a lot of use cases for the distributed ledger, and we're really only scratching the surface of what's possible. You know, when I looked at this diagram, it reminded me of the molecular structure of graphene. So I'm not sure if many people are familiar with graphene, but it was touted a number of years ago as being a super material that's going to replace conductive capabilities, and it's going to replace the way we work in a household and we do work in a working condition. But it hasn't come to fruition yet. So I feel a bit like blockchain has the same challenges to traverse. There's a lot of security issues that need to be clarified, especially when people think of it in light of the Bitcoin, which is sometimes wrong. But it's certainly going to be a challenge getting mainstream adoption. So with that, I will pass over to you, Paul, so you can address analytics and the distributed ledger as a part of the Qlik suite.
Sure, absolutely. So all three cases you just explained, some of them traditional, some of them not traditional. What we're showing there is that these are transactional systems. These are systems that have information and data, and that bridge that needs to be created is how do you get that information and turn it into insights and turn it into something that a business user can use. And so we have a slide here essentially saying that visualization is what Qlik is often known for, but that's quite insufficient when it comes to the stated goal. And the stated goal is getting that information on the left-hand side pushed through to the visualization, and that visualization distributed to the organization on the right-hand side, which you may call the consumption model. And so all that entire process is handled by one analytics platform, or an analytics platform that has the capacity to solve some very, very complex challenges, particularly with this new data source. Call that new data source the blockchain or the distributed ledger. And so with that new data source now comes another realization that the information is never just in one place. In fact, it's the rule that there's multiple data sources, that you need to see the entire story or the whole story that lives in your data. So we've highlighted distributed ledgers such as Ethereum and Ripple here in the one bucket. But the true value is going to come when that information is combined with the information in your CRM, such as Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce, the information in your ERP or your marketing databases and programs, or even bringing in external market information into the play. It's never in one particular place, and so if you keep that in mind, you will create the bridge between that transactional system and the rest of the organization through the analytics platform. And so Fred's going to go over now one of the use cases his organization's actually delivered at a top organization. I think it's a top 10 bank, you say, Fred, out of the UK?
Yep, that's correct. So Paul, we were faced with a significant challenge here. It was in a front office environment where there were several transactional systems across multiple regions, and it was very difficult to model price changes and the impact on net profitability and return on risk-weighted assets because of the disparate data sources. So we were tasked with addressing this challenge using Qlik, and we managed to build a solution for this tier one investment bank, which consolidated their transactional sources, but it also gave them a very neat interface for saying, listen, what happens if I increase my basis points on USD yen by 4 basis points? What happens to the net profitability? What happens if I put this client on another price? And you can instantly verify the net impact, but you can also then say, listen, okay, that's fine, but if we overlay that with the transactional volumes of a year ago, what would the impact be? So that helped this institution in the repricing scene, and significant savings in the forms of additional revenues and consolidated revenues were made using this implementation. And it's really this implementation that steered us onto the blockchain, because my stakeholder realized that we're using Qlik to bring all of these data sources together, but the core problem is still all of these multiple systems in multiple regions. So he posed a challenge to us saying, listen guys, I know I'm going to get disrupted by the blockchain at some point, but I don't know if that's 3 years out, I don't know if it's 5 years out, I don't know if that's 10 years out. Let's do a proof of concept around taking the data from these systems and simulating what happens during price change scenarios. And that's where we started on our blockchain journey. I mean, from a consulting perspective, Qlik is still the vast majority in what we execute in Qlik Sense and Qlik View, but we also now have a blockchain business unit that is actively developing Ethereum solutions for our clients. So, Paul,
just reiterating what occurred in your solution there. Sorry, we actually clicked ahead of time there, but you actually how many FX transaction systems were there? So you must have had an organization, a global organization doing business in multiple currencies. How many currencies were there roughly?
So off the top of my head, there were nearly 50 different currency pairs. I think that the vast majority of transactions were pushed through major currency pairs. So there's a handful of big players there, but you also have to cater for the emerging market currencies. That increases the complexity, and that increases the amount of transactional systems. But off the top of my head, I think we were looking at close to 13 different transactional systems that were born from multiple mergers and acquisitions during the heydays of the financial services boom times.
I would say that's probably the rule that I've seen in the industry as well. Even though there's been a big push to push all this data into one data warehouse over the last several decades, or one data lake, the information is still is actually quite disparate. It's disparate both in the different types of systems, but it's disparate across geographies as well. Do you agree with that?
Yep. That's entirely correct, Paul. And sorry, Paul, just to chime in there, I think the major advantage of Qlik and the analytical solution is, without going down the path of a new data lake strategy or a new consolidated data warehouse where all of these systems were going to push data to, we used Qlik to simulate what that would look like. And by then really isolating what the core issues are in terms of disparate systems, that allowed us the opportunities to say, listen, let's consolidate these transactional systems with a blockchain, and then we can focus our efforts on integrating these transactional data sets with what's going on in the CRM system, and then think about, okay, how does the transactions, what impact does it have on sales credits, and how do we actually marry this up with what we're seeing in our billing systems? And it's often when you start to really merge those data sets where more operational and internal savings are realized.
Yeah, and what you're doing is reiterating the thesis here, is that put the analytics piece closer to the beginning of the project, because it can actually help you along the way. And what we see our customers doing is solving for some really complex data challenges immediately and upfront. And then if there is still a need, which there often is in banking and financial services organizations, there's often the need to have some more governance behind the scenes, or have more control, or put everything in one place and protect it, then that can happen. But you've already solved the business user challenge up front, and those other processes, now the weight or the critical nature of those processes has actually been relieved. The pressure has been taken off.
And that's where most of the complexity lies. If you think about those different transactional systems, most of those systems had different views of the world. And what do I mean different views of the world? So they had different geography hierarchies, they had different client hierarchies, they had different product hierarchies. So if you think about all of those different master data sets in all of those systems, joining those or getting a golden table view of all of those, that is, most of the complexity or a lot of the complexity lies in that. And once you've solved that, then you have to navigate the transactional complexities, how to account for dummy trades or test trades. But by going through that process, by bringing analytics up the ladder and navigating those problems and establishing the business logic, you do point to areas that for strategic improvement rather than a tactical fix. And that can then be done concurrently to your analytics project. And then you can make a call, where are we going to get the best return on investment?
Yeah, it's really moving the goalposts of where value is created for the organization, and you're moving them to the beginning as soon as possible, as opposed to at the end. I think I've sent you a couple of those cartoons that I've seen floating around on LinkedIn, showing that somebody is working on a blockchain project, but nobody can demonstrate it to them. So, speaking of demo. I'd like that for a transition into the demo. So before we get into the actual demo, could you just run through what Ripple is and maybe tell the story of what we did?
Yep, I have to do that, Paul. So this is an architectural diagram of Ripple. So my best understanding of the transactional system is that it uses a distributed ledger to house all of the transactional information that passes through the system. But I think it's got a unique protocol called a Ripple Connect, which allows it to take a bank's transactional systems and convert that into a language that will speak with the distributed ledger. So the Ripple Connect will be deployed at various institutional, financial, foreign exchange, and institutional investment houses. And once the information is changed or updated to speak to the Ripple distributed network, that's really when settlement can occur, and settlement can occur at a vastly reduced cost. Now, where do we come into the picture? Now, the data that is collected and crunched through a very sophisticated hashing algorithm gets stored in a distributed ledger. Now, with Qlik, we've got the availability to use the REST API to connect into the ledger and actually pull the information out and start analyzing. But it's very much it was very much reverse engineered. So we went through a process of retrieving multiple tables and then figuring out, okay, where does the master data sit, and then figuring that for ourselves. But the real proof or the concept of value that we want to show here was we were able to use Qlik's out-of-the-box REST API connector to connect to a blockchain data source and started immediately trying to, or extracting information and then putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So that's where we started. I mean, we obviously can do a lot more in this space, but that's as simple as it is. It's just another data source for Qlik.
Yep, and so I'm going to pop into what it actually looks like. And so just another data source. In this particular case, as it loads up, we'll give it a second. In this particular case, I called out. I contacted you because I knew you happen to have some blockchain expertise, and I would be familiar with Ripple, and said, hey, I found that there's a historical RESTful API out there. Let's take a look. And what you guys did was you guys dug in and understood how the API was aligned, and essentially sucked in all 8.7 million transactions or 8.8 million transactions from 2016 into this one particular app. And so in this app, we have a Qlik app on the Pomerol servers that has approximately 9 million transactions conducted by over 26,000 Ripple accounts and has over 387 distinct currency pairs. And they essentially just pulled the data model through Qlik and gave us the ability to access it. And now we, of course, when you look at numbers, it doesn't make any sense to look at numbers without actually looking at a single currency. So the first thing we prompt you to do is say, pull up a currency. I select US dollars as the currency, and now within US dollars, I have 1,590 transactors or senders, 710,000 transactions, and this is over the course of 2016. And a total amount paid of $11 million, average paid per transaction of $8,206. And so within this, of course, this is just a couple of things we're showing here. I could come back out and say, instead of looking at that, let's take a look at XRP to XRP. And so here's a transaction, and now I'm diving into all of the Ripple to Ripple currency pairs. In other words, people are simply transacting business in Ripple's currencies, which is XRP. I don't particularly like the way this is sorted. I'm going to actually just change the sorting by opening it up and changing the sorting. And now I'm looking at all of the Ripple to Ripple transactions occurred, and we're taking the 8 left characters of a very long and difficult to read key that essentially masks who these senders are. And the way this works, Fred, is that you'd only be able to actually see your transactions once you are pulling on, and who you're transacting with. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. So you'll have a unique identification code showing where you fit into that hierarchy. But theoretically, I mean, if you have multiple accounts, you can map that into the solution and see how you're transacting across the board.
Yep, exactly. And even more interesting, we've spoken as recently as last week, and it would be very, very interesting to see a combination of data from both the Ripple APIs, but what about some other, combining this with other systems as we talked about before, or even other blockchain or distributed ledger systems? It would be perfectly reasonable to combine the transactions and see one holistic view.
Yeah, because Paul, I mean, this is just one transactional source, right? If you're a big financial institution, the Ripple network will just be another channel that you transact through, and so you having this visualization on top of your transactions through Ripple is valuable, but you really need to consolidate that with your other transactions in order to make sense of the numbers. And once you've made sense of the numbers, that's really when you start pulling in the other data sources. Really, where are my products coming from? Where are my clients coming from? Getting the data out of Salesforce and combining it and overlaying it here, so you can see also what impact that has on sales credits and then how that gets allocated. So you've got part of the story here, and Qlik helps you, uncover it very quickly, but you need to take it to the next level by leveraging Qlik's ETL capabilities to bring it to life.
Excellent, and that's a great place to end it. And let's pause the screen share and take it to the Q&A.
Excellent, excellent. We've got some great questions in the queue, and I think we should jump right into it. We've got some time here, so if anybody's got some thoughts about what they'd like to ask, now would definitely be the time to get your questions in the queue. We'd love to hear from you. So let me kick things off with this first question. All right, and how exactly did you capture the 8.7 million records from Ripple?
So, Mike, it was fairly easy. I mean, Ripple made available an API called the REST API. So we effectively just leveraged that, and Qlik has the native capability of connecting through that API. So we essentially hooked up our system, our service via that API, and then we had to play around to find the right transactional tables. So we had a dig through all of the sources and eventually got to the main transactional table sets. And yeah, it was we downloaded them, and once we did a bit of scrubbing on the master data, we put together a simple interface just to try and understand how the system works and how the account structure works. But yeah, I mean, it was fairly simple once the data started flowing.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to that, as we mentioned earlier, what's important is that you capture that information and then you combine it with other data sources like the customer relationship system or the marketing data that you have, and the combination of that information is going to bring insights to the users that weren't previously thought of even, or definitely weren't previously available.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right. Next question. Have there been any use cases that would impact the lending?
So Mike, it's Fred here again. I think lending is probably one of the greatest use cases out there for using the distributed ledger. I mean, we, as a consulting services provider, I mean, we're very much at the mercy of what our current clients are looking at implementing. But yeah, if you look at a lending operation, capturing the information around credit risk and credit history, that is absolutely prime for using a distributed ledger, because currently, the conventional systems in Donald & Bradstreet and Experian, you are relying on a third party. But if there's a way to put that information on a distributed ledger where more participants can contribute to that, to that data set, yeah, it has a massive disruptive potential. So no, I mean, so lending, definitely yes. I mean, I'd love to get stuck into one of those proof of concepts, but yeah, it's a prime case for distributed ledger.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Fred. All right, here. Another question. Have you come to see different applications of blockchain in supply chain management, AR or AP? If so, can you detail improvement in efficiencies experienced by those firms?
So Mike, the short answer there is no, we haven't had an implementation within supply chain yet. Most of our current clients are in financial services. We have got the odd manufacturing client. But yeah, I mean, the use case is similar to lending is enormous. I mean, if you look at the process around handling data from the vendor management process, credit risk, credit payment history, invoice factoring, it's a prime example for using the distributed ledger to consolidate a lot of information. Love to get stuck into that in a proof of concept like that, but at the moment, I mean, I can't really comment on efficiencies because I haven't executed distributed ledger in that segment.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, here. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. And let me read the next one off here. Okay, merging disparate data sets is, in quotes, bring the apps to the data or the data to the apps, unquote. So if this is strategic IP, does this mean you bring it to the back-end processing to layer the analytics on top for the insights? That is, does it stay on the mainframe?
That's a good question. I'll attempt to take that one. And I think what the question's getting at is, at least I'll try to address it from the Qlik perspective. From the Qlik perspective, what we do is we bring disparate data sources together and integrate them into what's called the Qlik associative data model. And that data model is different than traditional, we'll call it traditional query-based reporting. And what the benefits of that data model is that the data has been combined from these different data sources at a very, very granular level, and you remove the need oftentimes for that pre-aggregation. And so what it allows you to do by having all the data at your fingertips across all the data sets is it allows you to freely explore across these data sets. We had one customer from a large bank say, there's a couple things that make this data model different. One is when you look under the engine and look under the hood and see what the Qlik engine's actually doing, it is different than anything in the marketplace. And the second thing is search. And what he means by search is, but now that we have these granular details from these multiple disparate data sets together, you're allowed to search almost a Google-like experience across the entire data set. And that provides the user a tremendous amount of flexibility, and it eliminates some of the challenges that have been faced previously with things like many-to-many relationships, one-to-many, many-to-one, that type of thing. So I'm not sure if I hit it exactly, but it is the way that Qlik handles data is unique, and it is and the output of that, or the value of that, is speed, complexity, being able to solve complex challenges, that is, and also scalability, being able to put that out to large data sets and also to a large number of people.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. And that, I see lots of great questions in our queue, but a lot of them are sort of, which happens sometimes, best answered sort of one-on-one. So I think we've gotten to the end of the questions that we'll be addressing in a group, but everyone else that put your questions in there, please be assured that we'll be following up directly with you. So I think we've got about 15 minutes we can give you back in your day, but if history is any guide, everyone appreciates a little time back in everyone's busy day. So let me thank Paul and Fred for a great 45 minutes of presentation and discussion. We have, like I said, we got lots of great questions here, so clearly that makes us feel very good about ourselves, because what we're saying is resonating with you also. Thank you for being here, of course. It's not something we would want to do without you, so thank everyone in the audience for being here. And we will be following up with you guys with an email soon that will have a link to the recording, as well as a PDF of the file that you've witnessed here today. So please keep an eye out for that, and then you can kind of relive this moment in time at your leisure in the future. And with that, I'll wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much, everyone.